Eleanor Fenwick had lived on the outskirts of Sparrow Shore for nearly 15 years, drawn to the quiet rhythms of the coastal village. The cottage she called home was perched near a copse of pine trees on a small rise, commanding a tidy view of the ocean beyond and thick tangled meadows below. In the distance, the rooftops of Sparrow Shore shone bright under the sun, and after dusk, the faint glow of street lamps appeared like dots of gold in the dark. As an avid birdwatcher, Eleanor spent many evenings taking notes on the owls, whippoorwills, and migrating seabirds that occasionally drifted in from the Atlantic. Yet the nighttime calls she started hearing that autumn were unlike anything she had ever recorded. It began on a Monday evening. She was in her garden, snipping a few sprigs of sage for a late supper. The sun was just sinking behind grey clouds, and a subtle hush spread through the country. That hush was soon broken by a single call, a short brassy whistle echoing from the grove of dogwoods by the old well. It didn't resemble any standard bird call. As a practiced observer, Eleanor recognized the difference between a bird's chirp and something unnatural. She edged closer, half expecting a raccoon or a fox, but no small creature presented itself. Instead, the call she'd heard repeated twice more, short, insistent, even urgent, before fading into the dusk. Curious, Eleanor decided to leave her dinner preparations behind and backed into her cottage just long enough to grab her recording equipment, a small portable device she used when seeking rare or unrecorded bird calls. She switched it on, pressed record, and stepped outside again. The call didn't immediately return. Undeterred, she set the recorder down on her porch railing and watched the tree line. Sometimes waiting was second nature for a dedicated birdwatcher. She settled in, letting the last of the day's warmth soak through her jacket, and listened. After a few minutes, the odd whistle echoed once again from among the trees. She felt adrenaline spark. The pattern was definitely unnatural, perhaps a mimic of some sort, but not one she recognized. She played back her recording, hoping the device caught the sound, and was pleased to hear the babyish squeak clearly on the tape. Satisfied, she retrieved her equipment and went inside. That night sleep proved elusive. Eleanor replayed the sound over and over, puzzling over its source. She even consulted a guidebook on local bird calls, but nothing matched. The idea flitted through her mind that perhaps it was a whistling thrush. The species was entirely out of place in Sparrow Shore, but perhaps someone's exotic pet had escaped. But even that was a stretch. She decided she needed more data. If the call repeated the next night, she'd have something more to go on. In town the following day she stopped by the local cafe, Marshlight Coffee, a popular corner for reading, gossiping and sipping strong espresso drowned in frothing milk. She ordered a cappuccino and settled at a small wooden table adorned with a vase of daisies. She watched her neighbours filter through the shop. Working men popped in to buy black coffee and donuts, while a few retirees lingered with newspapers. Then a familiar face came in. Linda Haviland, the owner of the local gift shop. Linda waved and sidled over to Eleanor's table. "How's life up on the hillside, Ellie?" Linda asked, always cheerful. Eleanor suppressed a grin at the use of Ellie, a nickname she'd begun to find endearing. "Quiet, mostly. But I heard something strange last night. A call in the woods. It didn't sound like any bird I know." Linda's eyes lit with curiosity. "Like a coyote or a fox, maybe?" "That's what I assumed, but it sounded too contrived. I recorded it. I might head over to the library to see if I can match it with anything in their wildlife references." She paused, stirring her cappuccino. "By the way, how's everything in town? I haven't been in for a few days." Linda shrugged and leaned in, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "There's some talk about Bronwyn Snow. You remember, the pop star turned local singer who's been missing for over a week now?" Eleanor nodded, remembering the posters around Sparrow Shore. Bronwyn Snow had been a child star in a successful band and later chose to settle in Sparrow Shore for a quieter life. Something about her going missing had set the entire town on edge. A few folks thought it could be a publicity stunt, but the local police took it seriously. Have they found any clue where she might be? Not that I know of, Linda said, frowning. There's a detective from the county seat, Detective Shore. He's asking around, but no leads that I've heard. Some speculate she ran off. Others think it's foul play. Eleanor pressed her lips together, feeling that small prickle of concern stirring. I hope she turns up soon. Oh, me too, Linda agreed. She was due to perform at the Harvest fundraiser in a few days, and they've postponed it, hoping she'll be found. Strange business, all of it. Eleanor offered a worried nod, finished her cappuccino, and excused herself to head to the library. At the library's reference desk, she approached Helena Moretti, the librarian, who had helpfully guided many a curious mind in Sparrow Shore. Eleanor explained that she'd recorded an odd call and wanted to compare it to local wildlife samples. Helena showed her to a corner of the library stacked with books and CDs containing bird calls, recruitment signals, and other nature recordings. Eleanor spent almost an hour scanning indexes, but no match emerged. Frustrated, she was about to leave when Helena quietly approached. You said it might not be a bird at all, right? Helena suggested, her thick glasses perched on her nose. I have some additional archives of strange local recordings, things people contributed over the years. Ghost noises, rumored big cat screams. Sometimes it's just an odd echo of the wind. You might find something there. Thank you, Eleanor replied gratefully. From those archives she found a few mystery calls, yet none matched the distinct staccato whistle that she had recorded. She left the library puzzled, her curiosity unsated. That evening the sound returned, just around twilight. This time, Eleanor was ready. She positioned her recorder and a camera, though she doubted she'd capture anything in the darkness. The call echoed 3 times in rapid succession. By the time she was certain she had a good recording, her heart was pounding. She stood as motionless as she could, scanning the tree line with binoculars. It was too dark to see anything but fleeting silhouettes among the branches, yet the sense that something or someone was out there, intentionally creating or mimicking a bird call, set her nerves buzzing. The next morning she played the recording again, studying the pattern. She recognized a subtle difference between the calls on each subsequent night. The second was slightly lower in pitch, the third more reedy. It was as though someone, or something, was adjusting, refining, or communicating in some code. At first that notion sounded far-fetched, but as she listened, she realized the whistles formed a repeated motif. Short, short, long, long, short, short, long. Reminiscent of frantic Morse code. Could it be a cry for help? Eyes widening, she decided to head to the local wildlife center, which was run by an old friend, Harriet Dunn. Harriet was a stout woman, quick to laugh and quicker to help. She'd once been a ranger at a state park along the coast. If anyone would know how to decipher an unidentifiable call, Harriet would. After hearing the recordings, Harriet frowned and turned to her computer, tapping at the keyboard to bring up an audio analysis program. The spectrogram displayed waveforms that Harriet studied carefully. She cross-referenced with local species, scanning through possible matches. As expected, no definitive match appeared. Harriet's gaze lingered on the screen, the lines rolling in blues, reds, and greens. This looks artificial, Harriet murmured. See how the pitch is not as fluid as a bird's natural call. There are step-like frequencies here, almost as if it's produced by a whistle, or even a device. Do you think it's someone playing a prank on you? Eleanor let out a long breath. I'm almost sure it's not a normal bird. I even wondered if it's some coded message. At the suggestion, Harriet raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting thought. You see these repeating bursts here? She pointed at the screen. That's unusual. Eleanor briefly recounted the story of Bronwyn's Snow's disappearance, wondering aloud if the calls could be connected. Harriet scoffed, saying it was a bit of a stretch, but recognized that small towns sometimes harbored big mysteries. You might talk to the local police if you think it's connected, Harriet advised. I'd keep an ear out, Record more if you can." So that night, determined to glean more information, Eleanor prepared a small stakeout. She brought a thermos of tea, a snack or two, plus a pair of warm blankets. She set herself up on the porch, well hidden behind a potted hydrangea. Though the call had always emanated from the trees, she hoped that if she remained quiet and patient, she might see a figure, or at least confirm the general direction of the sound. Just after dusk, the first call came. A short, almost harsh whistle. She jotted down the exact time and pointed her camera into the gloom. The next call was louder. She froze. With slow, controlled movements, she angled her binoculars toward the pines. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A dark shape with distinctly human outlines. Her heart hammered. She looked more carefully, adjusting focus. Whoever stood there was partially obscured by shrubbery. She saw a faint glint, perhaps a flashlight or phone. The shape lifted something to their mouth and created the next whistle. Spooked but resolute, Eleanor inched up from her hiding spot. The figure seemed ready to retreat deeper into the woods. Carefully, she slipped off the porch and crept into the yard, determined to follow. The ground was damp with the day's drizzle, and stray branches cracked underfoot. The figure must have heard her approach, because they suddenly moved deeper among the shadows. Undeterred, she called out softly, "Hello? I'm not here to harm you. Are you all right?" No response. She paused, listening. The only sound was the whistle, echoing from further away as if luring her deeper. Gathering her nerve, she pressed on. About 100 yards in, the moonlight trickled through branches, illuminating a battered footpath. Something glinted near a tree trunk, a small pendant or charm dangling from a snapped chain. Eleanor picked it up gingerly and shone her flashlight on it. Her heart leapt. She recognized the shape of a silver swallow with tiny blue gems for eyes. It was exactly like the jewelry Bronwyn Snow wore in many of her press photos. Eleanor stared at it, unsettled but also resolute. Something bigger was definitely happening here. She decided not to wander further into the woods alone. Instead, she retreated carefully, tucking the pendant into her jacket pocket, headlights of relief blossoming as she spotted her cottage lights up ahead. Inside, she locked the door and phoned the local police. Detective Shore, the out-of-town investigator leading the search for Bronwyn, arrived within the hour, along with Officer Ramos, Sparrow Shore's longtime policeman who mostly handled mundane tasks like parking disputes. Eleanor explained what she had experienced, showed them the pendant, and played the recorded bird whistle from that night. Detective Shore was a tall man in his 40s, with a methodical, calm demeanor that softened the moment he recognized Bronwyn's pendant. He asked urgent questions. "Did you see who dropped it? Did you see Bronwyn herself? Could you tell if it was a man or a woman with the whistle?" Eleanor shook her head at the unanswered questions. "I saw a dark figure with something up to their lips, but that's all. It could be anyone." Officer Ramos frowned at the silver swallow, confirming it matched images he'd seen posted around town. "We've got to search this area more thoroughly," he said. Detective Shore agreed. He asked Eleanor if they could set up a proper search party and continue recording any calls. She readily agreed, though a swirl of anxiety coiled in her stomach at the idea that Bronwyn Snow might be in trouble in the very woods by her home. The next day, small teams of officers combed the grove, but found no sign of Bronwyn or anyone else. A few footprints, half washed away by the week's drizzle, were discovered. The path vanished among thick brambles. Detective Shore concluded that whoever was behind the whistling was clever enough to keep their nightly visits short and their tracks minimal. "If they're returning regularly," the detective said, "there must be a reason, possibly exchanging signals with someone or leaving messages." He paused, looking at Eleanor. "The pendant that you found, did you notice anything about its chain or clasp?" She recalled the chain was snapped, as if torn off in a struggle. "It was ripped or broken," she murmured, feeling a sudden wave of pity for Bronwyn. That night, the calls sounded again. This time the police were waiting. They'd hidden themselves around the perimeter of the grove, flashlights ready, searching for movement. Eleanor and Harriet watched from the porch. Just after 10:30 the whistle rose. Short, long. Several sets of flashlights converged on the area, but the whistling abruptly stopped. By the time the searchers reached the spot, no one remained. The only clue was an empty foam cup near a tree trunk, presumably left behind by the culprit. The next day, the cup was tested for fingerprints, but the results were inconclusive. With tension mounting, Detective Shaw grew more determined. He began to wonder if Bronwyn had been kidnapped and was somehow sending a clandestine signal, or if a suspect responsible for her disappearance was playing some twisted game. The entire town was abuzz. Rumors flew at Marshlight Coffee and along the waterfront. Some said Bronwyn had staged everything for publicity. Others insisted she was forcibly taken and was cleverly dropping hints. Eleanor found the speculation draining, but her birdwatcher's senses refused to let the matter go unsolved. Feeling that the answer might lie in the recorded calls, Eleanor pored over them again, this time focusing on the structure of the whistles rather than their pitch. She played them slowly, listening for a pattern in the beats and rests. She wrote down stops and intervals, dots and dashes it almost seemed. Her eyes scanned the scribbles and letters formed in her mind. M-E-T, B-O-A-T. The more she tried to translate the whistles as if they were Morse code, the more certain she became that there was a message hidden beneath. She carefully put pen to paper. Night 1. Short, long, short, long. It could correspond to M if it was Morse code, though it was not a perfect match. Night. 2 different pitch, but still short, long repeated. Night. 3. A shift in the intervals. It took her several hours and numerous cross-checks. Bit by bit she assembled a short phrase. Meet, boat, dock. The last repeated call included the letters S-U-N. Together it could read, Meet, boat, dock, sun, possibly a reference to the boat docks at sunrise. Her hand trembled with excitement and dread. If this was correct, the whistles were someone's attempt to say, meet at the boat dock at sunrise. Was Bronwyn sending out a rescue request? Or was the suspect instructing an accomplice? She had to share her findings with Detective Shaw immediately. He listened carefully to her theory, eyebrows lifting in interest. "That's quite the deduction, Miss Fenwick," he said. "We'll stake out the docks. Would you be willing to come along and help us interpret these signals if they continue?" She hesitated, but her sense of responsibility overcame her nerves. "Yes, I'll go. I can't stand by with suspicion swirling and do nothing." So, at dawn the next morning, they waited quietly along the piers. A cold, wispy fog shrouded the water, and seagulls cawed overhead. Detective Shaw positioned 2 officers at the far ends of the dock, concealing them behind fishing crates. Eleanor stood with Harriet behind a storage shed, peeking round the corner. Sunrise stained the horizon pink, and the ocean glittered in gold. At first there was only the splash of small waves and the murmur of gulls. Then, faintly, came that whistle. Short, she spotted movement near a row of pilings, someone in a dark hoodie, gingerly stepping onto a small motorboat moored there. Detective Shaw signaled for the officers to move in. As they did, the hoodie-clad figure spotted them and tried to start the motor. With quick reflexes, Officer Ramos dashed forward, cutting them off. The figure tumbled back, nearly knocking over a crate of buoy markers. In the struggle, the hood fell, revealing a lean man with a weathered face that was vaguely familiar to Eleanor as a local fisherman named Tobias Greeley. One of the officers pinned him, while Harriet frowned in confusion. Tobias, ordinarily a subdued presence around town, was known for his nightly fishing runs. Detective Shaw firmly asked, "Why were you making those whistling calls? Do you know where Bronwyn Snow is?" Tobias was trembling. "I don't know. I swear. Someone paid me to do it. They said to create these calls at night in the woods, but not to get caught. They left instructions and told me if I didn't follow, I'd regret it." "Who?" demanded the detective, shaking his head. "Explain." The fisherman gulped. "Never told me his real name. Tall guy, black hair. I was near the docks one night, minding my own business, when he approached with a wad of money. He told me Bronwyn Snow had some gambling debts. She'd run off and he needed to find her. He said if I used these calls, like a code, someone else might surface. He gave me a piece of paper with the whistle pattern. Is she really missing? Look, I didn't mean any harm. I assumed it was something hush-hush, but legal enough. I'd no idea she was forcibly taken or anything." Detective Shore's eyes narrowed. "You didn't see Bronwyn at all?" Tobias shook his head. "No. I just did what the man asked and planned to meet him at dawn so he could pay me more. He told me to keep my mouth shut or else. I was going to run away by boat if he showed up. You see, I got scared. Figured maybe I was in over my head." Eleanor's heart sank. The man behind these calls was elusive, yet Tobias's story suggested Bronwyn was likely still in danger. Harriet rubbed her temples, frustration building. He must have told Tobias to do this so that whoever actually has Bronwyn might respond somehow. But why do that so close to your cottage, Ellie? Detective Shore took a measured breath. "We need to track this tall, dark-haired man. Perhaps Tobias gave him a meeting place that happened to be near Miss Fenwick's home, but we still need real leads on Bronwyn's whereabouts." He paused, eyes wandering to the rising sun. "Tobias, can you recall anything else about the man? A car? A boat? Any name he mentioned?" Tobias squirmed, racking his memory. Had a dark SUV parked in the public lot by the wharf. No plates I could see. I remember a partial name or something. He called himself Vin or Vincent. They kept pressing. But Tobias had little more to give. The day wore on and the stakeout ended. With no new developments, the detective assigned officers to watch the woods in case the man came back to see if the calls were continuing. The entire scenario felt like a labyrinth, with no direct path to Bronwyn. But that evening, close to midnight, a sudden phone call roused Eleanor from her doze on the living room couch. She scrambled to answer, half expecting Harriet or Linda. Instead, a soft, trembling voice spoke on the line. "Help, please." Her pulse hammered. "Bronwyn?" A short sob emerged from the other end. "Yes. I can't talk long. I stole a phone. I'm locked in a shack near the orchard behind the old Avery estate. Please. He's coming back soon." The line cut off. Eleanor jolted awake with alarm. She phoned Detective Shore immediately, her words tumbling out. Within minutes, the detective had assembled a small team to check the orchard behind the old Avery estate, which had been abandoned for decades. Word travelled fast, and Harriet also drove out to help. Eleanor, though frightened, insisted on accompanying them, still clutching the phone in case Bronwyn managed to call again. The orchard was dark, the trees gnarled from years of neglect. Rotting fruit littered the ground. A slight breeze ruffled branches overhead, scattering leaves across the grass. They found a dilapidated wooden structure partially hidden beneath vines, its doorway padlocked. Detective Shore motioned for the others to back him up. He lifted a heavy crowbar and pried hard at the padlock until it gave way with a crack. Then he raised his flashlight inside. Huddled in the corner, shaking and weak, was Bronwyn Snow. Her hair was messy, her clothes torn, but she was alive. Eleanor's eyes filled with relieved tears as the detective and Officer Ramos helped her out. Bronwyn stared at them in astonishment, tears brimming as she realized she was finally safe. She mumbled incoherent thanks, pointing toward the orchard. "Tom was here. He left just a bit ago. He said he was checking on a boat or something. I was too scared to ask." Detective Shore ordered a search of the grounds. However, the suspect was long gone, apparently alerted by something or spooked into leaving. They would have to rely on Bronwyn's statement to track him down. She was taken promptly to the hospital to ensure she was physically all right. Old, dehydrated and bruised, she needed rest. Eleanor left the orchard, relieved but shaken. Only the next day did more clarity emerge from Bronwyn's account. The man who abducted her was indeed named Vincent. He was an old associate who discovered Bronwyn's new location in Sparrow Shore. He meant to blackmail her using old secrets from her time in show business, debts, possible lawsuits, anything that might scare her. When she refused to comply, he took drastic measures, confining her to a shack once owned by his family's caretaker. He then arranged for Tobias to whistle coded messages at night, presumably to entice either Bronwyn's friends or some other threatened associate into a trap. But Bronwyn gleaned enough from eavesdropping on Vincent's phone calls to guess he had instructed someone to use a code. She had no clue it'd lead to Toby, or that it might eventually clue in a vigilant birdwatcher. However, once she swiped Vincent's phone, she immediately thought of the quiet woman who lived near the orchard and had always been kind when they crossed paths at the cafe. Bronwyn found her number, though they'd never shared more than neighborly greetings and small talk. Over the following weeks, the entire town of Sparrow Shore breathed a collective sigh of relief that Bronwyn was safe. Detective Shaw put out an APB for Vincent, who had vanished. Rumors suggested he fled out of state. Bronwyn took some time to recover, physically and mentally, grateful for the outpouring of support from her neighbors. She personally thanked Tobias for having the courage to confess everything, even though his motives were clouded by the money he received, and she arranged a quiet meeting with Eleanor, hugging her tearfully. "I'll never forget what you did," Bronwyn whispered over a cup of steaming chamomile tea in Eleanor's cottage. "Your recordings, your instincts, they saved me. Who would guess a birdwatcher's ear for unusual calls could cut through all that darkness?" Eleanor smiled, feeling a tinge of pride. The madness of it all still rattled her, but the gratitude shining in Bronwyn's damp eyes eased her lingering worries. "I'm just glad I was listening," she said. "When something doesn't fit, the best thing you can do is pay attention. Trust your instincts." Bronwyn flipped the small silver swallow pendant between her fingers. "You even found this. I can't believe I lost it that night I tried to run. It means so much to me." Eleanor nodded. "Keep it safe. In Sparrow Shore, we look out for each other. If you ever need help, I'll be listening." In the days that followed, the police continued searching for Vincent, but no one questioned that the real hero was a quietly determined birdwatcher who recognized that those strange night calls in the pines weren't wildlife, but a clue to a hidden crime. Gradually, life in the small coastal village found its rhythm again. Bronwyn began making appearances, softly reintroducing herself to the community she had come to love. The harvest fundraiser was rescheduled, with Bronwyn promising free tickets for everyone as a thank you for their support and relief efforts. And, for Eleanor Fenwick, the memory of that last bird-like whistle in the dark remained etched in her mind. Sometimes, as she sat on her porch at twilight, she would listen to the gentle rustle of leaves and the call of real birds, owls hooting softly, a whippoorwill repeating its plaintive cry. She still kept her trusty recording device ready each night, but now she heard those sounds with renewed appreciation. She understood that in Sparrow Shore you never knew when a simple odd call might unlock a world of secrets.